Nani?
2020. Oh my god. Surely a fantastic year for you all, and most definitely a fantastic year for this life-devouring hobby of mine. While I didn't really play many newly released games, here is a list of games I did play in 2020. And here's a list of games I actually beat in 2020. And here is a list of games I beat for the first time in 2020. And finally, in this video, you'll hear me talk about my top 10 of these games. So yeah, in case you didn't catch that, this is my list of favorite games I beat for the first time in 2020, and actually the best games released in 2020. You were misled, deluded, deceived, hoodwinked, bamboozled onto the list! But before that, I have a few honorable mentions, games I replayed, therefore don't miss this list, don't meet this list criteria, and games I did beat for the first time, but simply didn't make it into the Cool Kids Club of the illustrious top 10. Those games being the Masterclass in Characterization and Storytelling, Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Trials in Tribulations, the near-perfect platformer with an assuredly perfect soundtrack,
Banjo-Kazooie!
The flawed but nonetheless great JRPG classic Dragon Quest III: The Seeds of Salvation, and the adequate survival horror title Resident Evil 0. Try Googling, what is the best Dragon Quest game? You're gonna get a lot of 5s and 8s and 11s, you may even see a few 7s and 9s in there, but while opinions on the best game are pretty divided, if you search, what is the worst Dragon Quest game? You're almost always going to get the same unanimous result, that being Dragon Quest II. So imagine my surprise when I started playing this awful, horrid game, and I found myself completely and utterly enthralled. It took me about 15 hours to beat, 9 of which were spent in one long, continuous sitting, where I just couldn't bring myself to put the game down because I was having too much fun! The game is very open-ended. Once you have a full party, the game gives you a ship and tells you to just explore the world. Making your way to the end of the game is only possible through consistent and thorough exploration and clue gathering, and an online map for that one dungeon at the end of the game. To be fair to DQ2's abundance of naysayers, the original NES game was rushed out the door so fast that developers didn't even have a chance to properly playtest the game's final build. Naturally, this led to all sorts of unfortunate quirks that are basically irrelevant because I played the X Nintendo Switch version, which is more or less the game Dairy Queen 2 was meant to be. If you're open to trying out a short but sweet old school JRPG with a focus on exploration backed by a 10 out of 10 soundtrack, then look no further than Dragon Quest II: Luminaries of the Legendary Line. I haven't played many visual novels, but despite my lack of experience, I still very boldly declare this to be the best the genre has to offer, if for no other reason than this one is so good that I just can't imagine anything else topping it. The very basic gist of the story is that a wacky group of so-called inventors just so happen to accidentally figure out one of the greatest quandaries known to modern science, time travel, using a microwave and a Nokia. There are bananas involved. Hijinks ensue. Admittedly, I wasn't sure at first I was going to enjoy this game. Initially, I wasn't quite enthused by the cast. I mean, you got the delusional main character with a split personality, this guy who's gonna inevitably end up on a certain list of predators, and you got the one that speaks only via text message, the one who speaks in cat puns.
Hey, you stop laughing right now.
The stupid one. But I stuck with it, and eventually it all clicked, and I suddenly got each of these strange, wacky characters and became invested in their story. So much so that I sunk 50 hours into this game, unlocking every ending, opening up a whole new world of science adventure for me to explore, including spin-offs, side stories, sequels, an anime, and a movie. And enjoy I did. Perhaps this was the will of Steins Gate. El Sai Kungru. You ever see that meme? Name a character who went through more pain than Ellie from The Last of Us. Oh, wait! Well, here's your true, unironic answer. The mad scientist Holy Kyoma himself. If you're the kind of person who enjoys watching someone's emotional well-being slowly and painfully deteriorate to the brink of irreversible insanity, then you've come to the right channel. Otherwise, Steins Gate is the game for you! I can't believe it. They did it! After so many long, torturous years, they finally made the game we've been begging for. A true successor to the original Paper Mario games. One that continues the legacy of the series. One that respectfully pays tribute to all the various aspects that made those games so gosh darn beloved, while simultaneously brimming with its own unique identity. They finally really did it. And by they, I'm talking about Moonsprout Games, because I'm talking about Bug Fables, the everlasting sapling. I have a preview video for Bug Fables on my channel. It's the only video that ever got any views. In that video, I shared my excitement for the game's upcoming Switch release. I was pretty hyped, and in the end, more or less lived up to my expectations. And as much as it was clearly meant to be a successor to the old pap smear Mario, the game quite effortlessly creates its own world with its own lore, its own backstory, its own characters, its own rules. The game is heavily inspired by Paper Mario, yes, but it never once gives the impression that it's trying to be Paper Mario. For anyone afraid of buying into the millionth watered-down clone of a popular game series, rest assured that Bug Fables isn't trying to be Paper Mario any more than Silent Hill is trying to be Resident Evil, or any more than Bayonetta is trying to be Devil May Cry, or any more than Final Fantasy is trying to be Dragon Quest. You get the idea. Bug Fables has a bucket load of commendable traits to put adjectives synonymous with good in front of, such as its excellent cast of characters, its incredible soundtrack, and its amazing wealth of side content to delve into. That last point in particular makes me forget that this is an indie game made by a tiny handful of people, and in that sense, I can safely say that Bug Fables, the Everlasting Sapling, is the best indie game I have ever played. This is the third Yakuza game I played in the last year or so, and in many ways, it's the best one. When it comes to story and characters, I didn't think anything would ever come close to Yakuza 0. Kiwami 2, unfortunately, was not the game to prove me wrong. Though, when it comes to pretty much every other single aspect of the game, it easily surpasses both 0 and especially the first Kiwami. Thanks to being built with a newer engine, not only are the graphics drastically improved, but the simple act of exploring the world has become so much more of a joy. Gone are the loading screens when entering buildings. Exploration of the entire city is now completely seamless. You can you can explore dank alleyways and stumble your way into office buildings and onto rooftops and other optional places. You can also jump over railings, which is cool. As if it wasn't enough that the camera is 100 times better, you can also walk around in first person and really immerse yourself in the city. A decent chunk of my playtime was just me using the game as a Japan tourist simulator. Coming right off of two other Yakuza games that take place in the same exact locations, it's impressive that Kiwami 2 managed to still be so fun for me to explore. And so, of course, the abundance of side content it's all there, as expected. The list of things to do in any given Yakuza game is so vast it's almost overwhelming, and that still holds true here. I am happy to report that the sub-stories in this game are just as amazing, hilarious, and memorable as they were in prior games, and while I wasn't blown away by the story overall, it did have a pretty fantastic climax full of twists and betrayal and all that good stuff. But most important of all, you can fight a tiger. And that's pretty cool. How can I possibly call the RE3 remake one of the best games of the year? They cut so many locations from the original, but I don't care. They made it so Nemesis only appears during scripted segments. Oh, I don't care. But they cut out puzzles from the original. Don't care. They changed Jill's facial capture model. I don't care. I understand all too well the plight of the original game's fans. I, too, would be upset if a beloved game of mine was remade only to cut out so much of the material that made me love to say this is that game in the first place, but in this case, I'm lucky that I still haven't played the original Resident Evil series, so I have nothing to directly compare the game to. It's easy to sit around and lament on what could have been, but At the end of the day, the Resident Evil 3 that I experienced was a super fun action horror game with a great setting, memorable set pieces, and some fun puzzles thrown in for good measure. The game was also super short, about 6 hours on my first playthrough. The key word here being first, because thanks to its short length, the game is extremely replayable. I guess it may not be quite as good as the Resident Evil 2 remake, but it's still pretty gosh dang good game, and that's all it really needs to be. I don't even know what else there is to say about Chrono Trigger. It's practically everybody's favorite RPG, and for good reason. What happens when you take the Dragon Quest guys and the Final Fantasy guy and they make a game together? It sounds like the kind of hypothetical dream game that could never happen, except it did, and it was everything you could ever want in such an idea. I first played it when it came out on DS, loved it, never finished it. And then I played it years later, same thing, loved it, but didn't finish it for reasons unknown. And in 2020, for the third time, I sat down to play the game, and yeah, I finished it this time, but at this point it was a little too late for me to feel the impact of beating such a great game, because I technically played it twice before already, except I didn't beat it those times, so there was no satisfaction there either, so yeah, basically I squandered a chance to experience the entirety of Chrono Trigger for the first time and join the millions who call those games their absolute favorite. Truly, my life, it's a cursed one. But yeah, Chrono Trigger is undoubtedly a great game, and by finally beating it, I can at last forgive myself for my greatest gaming sin. This game is a weird one. I've yet to be let down by a Shantae game. It really is a consistently fun series, but this game, from a gameplay perspective, is great. Shantae's animal transformations now act as seamless abilities rather than the different controllable forms and all that. I love that. It plays a lot like the pirate abilities from Shantae and the Pirate Cards, which is my favorite in the series. And the game was fun. It's got all that Metroidvania goodness, well, with the map and the dead ends and the backtracking and the new abilities and finding new items and a constant sense of progression and all that. It's good. It's good. It's also kind of underwhelming. Well, there's nothing technically wrong with the game. Nothing really stands out either. Like, I wouldn't call it boring by any stretch, but it's kind of formulaic, I guess. There's no standout locations, the story and characters are forgettable, the music is by far the worst in the series, honestly. It's my least favorite game of the series. But, still Shantae, it's still good, still fun. It may be lacking in presentation, but the core game still contains everything I like about the series, so that is why Shantae and the Seven Sirens is one of the best games of 2020! As much as I would love the chance to spread the word on the fantastic Lunar series, if I started now, this video would be a solid half hour of me gushing over how much I adore these games, so unfortunately, my long love letter to Lunar must be delayed to a later date. Basically, this is a direct sequel to Lunar Silver Star story, and structurally speaking, it's more the same. You have a simple, position-based battle system, a static, non-interchangeable party. Leveling up is a linear affair. You have your world map, your standard puzzle-less dungeons, your towns of the usual item shop with the healing items and the incremental equipment upgrades. From the outside, Lunar looks like it has all the workings of a safe and generic Japanese RPG. But to experience Lunar is another story altogether. The playable cast in each game is outstanding. I love each and every one of these characters. I can't even choose a favorite because of just how equally well written and interesting each one of them are. And speaking of well written, I never, as an RPG, had such a fun script. The most fun part of the game is walking around each town and talking to every character multiple times each because they always have something else to say. Reading books off the shelves, signs on the wall. The amount of personality oozing out of each line of text is just insanity. The NPC dialogue constantly changes as the story progresses, meaning you can talk to everyone all over again, and they all have new things to say, and your fellow party members are omnipresent. They're always on the screen, and they often interact with the world around them. The world and characters feel alive as a result, and the story is captivating. On the surface, it's just about a group of people trying to save the world from an evil god. Typical JRPG affair, but it goes so much deeper with so many great subplots and fantastic character moments and delightful detours and world building aplenty. There's even about an hour of fully animated cutscenes for when the tiny pixel characters just aren't enough. Even after the story ends and you watch the credits, there's an entire epilogue with hours worth of extra content, including the true ending of the story, complete with another credits roll, and the true ending is one of the best I've ever experienced. I don't want to be biased and act like the game is perfect. It certainly isn't. For one, the dungeons are an absolute slog. It's nothing but simple, boring mazes full of enemies throughout the entire game, and the dungeons only get longer and longer each time. Every time I think this floor will be the last, I ascend the staircase only to be disheartened by yet another long, boring floor. The battle system works extremely well for boss battles, but for the common enemy, it's... In the last stretch of the game, I ended up turning on auto battle and going on my phone while the characters walk away at each other. It's that bad. So yeah, the dungeons and battles are not particularly good, but every single other aspect of the game is stellar. Although it's immensely satisfying to have the story of Lunar wrapped up so tightly between these two games, it nonetheless breaks my gosh dang heart to know that there will never be a third Lunar game. Except that one. If I was a big fan of the original Final Fantasy VII, I would be beyond satisfied with how the remake turned out. The reimagined, more realistic take on Midgar is everything you could have ever hoped for. The remix music is handled beautifully. I especially love when the OG battle theme kicks in. Oh, it's so good, and the battle system, man, this game is so gosh dang fun to play. And I love, nay, prefer me some good old-fashioned turn-based battles, so that only makes the remake's real-time battle system all the more impressive. And perhaps most importantly, the characters are all treated with the utmost respect. Their looks, their writing, their voice acting, everything is top-notch. Side characters with hardly more than a few lines of dialogue in the original are now fully fleshed out and, dare I say, lovable characters. Then you've got the whole wall market section where they straight up turn Final Fantasy VII into a Yakuza game, and that's high praise. Yes, if I was a big fan of the original Final Fantasy VII, I would be beyond satisfied. Too bad I'm not! I mean, I like the originals well enough, but I didn't grow up with it, and I've had far more enjoyable experiences with a number of other PS1 JRPGs, and I think for me that makes the game's shortcomings less easier to forgive. For one, I found the game's side quests to be mostly just a bunch of lazy tacked-on time consumption devices. The game became significantly more enjoyable when I started ignoring them. Too bad I couldn't ignore some of the dungeons in the game. My goodness, there are some long dungeons in this game that go on and on and on forever. I'm looking at you, Train Graveyard! But this is my top 10 best games list, so I don't want to be too mean. I just don't want to give the impression that I loved Final Fantasy VII Remake, but hey, I'm glad I played it. I am very happy with how it turned out, and I will definitely be playing Part 2 the day it releases. But I'd rather have a Final Fantasy IX Remake. My interest in this game originally stemmed purely from how much I loved the artwork and character designs. When I found out it was created by the same team responsible for the wonderful and sadly overlooked Lunar series, my interest turned to excitement. And when they announced an HD port of both Grandia and Grandia 2 for the Switch, it was like the universe was telling me that I need to play this game. And play I did. Grandia is a game based on adventure. It's not exactly like a vast open world to explore, and there's hardly anything to do outside of the linear main quest, but the game still manages to hammer the theme of adventure and discovery into your head via the story and characters. There's a sense of build-up, knowing that each new area you enter is another step closer to the characters achieving their goal. And while it'd be easier to scoff at yet another story of children going on a grand adventure, Grandia is aware that his characters are just kids, and they're treated as such. The story is refreshing, lighthearted, innocent, if not particularly deep. Even with the somewhat silly 1990s localization, the great character moments shine through. There's one scene in particular that almost completely shattered my cold, icy heart, and that moment alone would have been enough to add Grandia to this list. Grandia is also home to a delightfully addictive battle system where you don't just level up your characters, but also their skills, each type of weapon and elemental magic. Every few levels, you learn a new skill of that type. Some skills even require you to be a certain level in both multiple weapons and magic types. You're encouraged to use different types of magic in every battle and regularly swap out weapons. It all works together brilliantly of the battle system, ensuring it never devolves into spam the attack button to win, or use your strongest skill in every battle, as I feel is a common occurrence in this genre. Overall, I like Grandia quite a bit, and I'm happy to finally knock this off my to-do list. Anyways, 2020, it was great. And I'm sure this year will be even better. Thank you for watching! From both myself and this video sponsor, Kiryu.